The Broken Blueprint, Part 3, The Story of Loma Linda and What It Did to Our Church, 1905 to Onward. Beginnings. Introduction. In Part 1 of this book, we surveyed the beginnings of our educational work and how repeated attempts by Ellen White to initiate blueprint schools were foiled, both in Battle Creek and at Emmanuel Missionary College. In Part 2, we viewed something new. Ellen White had been shown that the time had come for schools, ministries, and mission projects independent of church control to begin operating. We watched as Madison College was founded, learned how it carried on its blueprint work, and discovered the fatal error, the yearning for accreditation that led to its downfall. Now, in Part 3, we will turn our attention more fully to how the blueprint for a medical missionary school/sanitarium should be conducted. We will also discover that Loma Linda, founded at about the same time as Madison, made the same mistake. It decided to seek accreditation, but because of the nature of the situation, unlike Madison, this error by Loma Linda caused great problems for our entire denomination, problems we live with today, problems that deepen every year. Some of those desolating effects will be briefly overviewed in Part 4. Beginnings of our health message. The first real advance in health lines came with the 1863 vision given to Ellen White at Otsego, Michigan, just after the General Conference session that year. At this time, the denomination was organized and its name officially became the Seventh-day Adventist Church. At the May 1866 General Conference session, Ellen White gave a powerful address in which she urged the need to begin sharing the health message with others. As a result, Dr. Horatio S. Lay began a health journal, The Health Reformer. That same year, the Health Reform Institute was started in Battle Creek with Dr. Lay in charge. James reported that Ellen wept bitterly when the Health Institute was located on 8 acres of land in Battle Creek instead of on a rural farm as the Lord had recommended. Review, September 6, 1873. By that time, Battle Creek was a factory town of about 5,000 people. A 2-story building was erected, equipped with treatment rooms, and the institution opened for patients on September 5, 1866. Soon, the name was changed to the Western Health Reform Institute. The correct application of water, the right use of air, and a proper diet, along with other natural helps, brought healing to many and spread the fame of the institute. The allopaths thought that healing comes from the applications of poisonous substances, but Battle Creek was showing the world that healing came from right living and the use of harmless healing substances. The practice of health principles and the use of simple, hydropathic means of treating disease were regarded as a means of cooperating with the divine power which alone can truly heal. Disease was seen to be the result of transgression of natural law, and the duty and privilege of Christians to obey all these laws and teach others to obey them was a part of the everlasting gospel. M. E. Olson, Origin and Progress of Seventh-day Adventists, page 270. An early statement. The following warning was among her earliest statements about our medical work. It was written in 1865, 2 years after the health message was first given to us. The health reform is a branch of the special work of God for the benefit of His people. I saw that in an institution established among us, the greatest danger would be of its managers departing from the spirit of the present truth and from that simplicity which should ever characterize the disciples of Christ. A warning was given me against lowering the standard of truth in any way in such an institution in order to help the feelings of unbelievers and thus secure their patronage. The great object of receiving unbelievers into the institution is to lead them to embrace the truth. If the standard be lowered, they will get the impression that the truth is of little importance, and they will go away in a state of mind harder of access than before. First Testimony, page 560, and First Testimonies, page 633 to 634. Kellogg and the Sanitarium. In 1875, young John Harvey Kellogg, M.D., 1852 to 1942, a graduate of Bellevue Hospital Medical School in New York, joined the staff. The next year, he was appointed medical superintendent. 2 years later, a second building was added and the name was changed to Medical and Surgical Sanitarium. When someone remarked that sanitarium was not in the dictionary, Kellogg replied that it soon would be. Gradually, the Battle Creek Sanitarium achieved an international reputation as word spread that here was a place that really healed people with no undesirable after effects. In 1877, 1884, 1887, 1894, and 1895, more additions were made to the sanitarium. In 1895, the American Medical Missionary College was established, with Kellogg as its president. Adhering closer to spirit of prophecy methods of treatment, the Battle Creek Sanitarium became known worldwide. In 1891, Dr. David Paulson stopped by to see John Harvey Kellogg, M.D., at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Paulson asked a question that he had been thinking about for some time. "John, how is it that you are able to stay 5 years ahead of the rest of the medical profession?" Kellogg leaned back in his chair, and the answer he gave was one that Paulson never forgot. Kellogg replied that if something new was advocated, he instantly adopted it if, from his knowledge of Mrs. White's writings, it was sound. When other physicians finally accepted it, after slowly feeling their way, Kellogg had a 5-year head start. On the other hand, Kellogg rejected some of the new medical fads because they did not measure up to the light given to Mrs. White. When other doctors finally discovered their mistake, they wondered why Kellogg had not been caught as they had. Richard A. Schaefer, Legacy, page 60. Unfortunately, something happened inside Kellogg's thinking at the turn of the century. He became extremely proud and began veering away from confidence in Ellen White. By 1900, the entire complex had over 900 staff and workers. As other Adventist medical institutions were started elsewhere, Kellogg managed to become head of them. By this time, he was no longer using Seventh-day Adventist in the various names. In addition, a growing conflict was intensifying between John Kellogg and the leaders of the General Conference. Just after the turn of the century, by various legal manipulations, he quietly began working toward gaining legal control of the Battle Creek Sanitarium and the medical school. Very confident of himself, Kellogg wrote The Living Temple, which taught pantheism. Fortunately, Ellen White saved the denomination from that crisis. But by 1908, using legal manipulations, Dr. J. H. Kellogg managed to wrest control of Battle Creek Sanitarium and the American Medical College adjacent to it, away from the denomination. His medical school collapsed in the spring of 1910, never again to reopen. The story is told in detail in the present author's book on the lives of Kellogg and Ballinger, The Alpha of Apostasy. A grandiose building program in 1927, which included a 15-story tower and an elaborately decorated lobby and dining room, brought immense debt upon the Battle Creek Sanitarium. 2 years later, the Wall Street crash occurred, and Kellogg desperately tried to pay off that debt. He had to file for bankruptcy in 1933. In 1938, reorganization of the sanitarium was attempted under bankruptcy protection, but failing. In 1942, it was sold to the U.S. government. John Harvey Kellogg died on December 14, 1943, in his home in Battle Creek at the age of 91. Now we turn our attention to God's plan for a replacement for the work which Kellogg had shattered. 3 years before the Battle Creek Sanitarium and College were taken from us in 1908, the Lord guided that a far better site for our headquarters, Medical Missionary Sanitarium and Training School, was located. If God's directions had been followed, the entire denomination would today be the head and not the tail. It would have commanded a leading position in medical missionary work to the entire world. Here is what happened.